Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, is currently experiencing its worst economic crisis in a generation, leading to a widespread hardship and anger situation. Like many nations, Nigeria has experienced economic shocks from beyond its shores in recent years. But there are also issues specific to the country, partly driven by the reforms introduced by President Bola Tinubu when he took office last May. According to renowned economist Bismarck, Rewane, the 70% windfall tax imposed on banks by the federal government is too high and will deter investors from coming to Nigeria. He advised the government to peg it at the initially proposed 50%. The economist further stated that windfall tax collection is vital to double the revenue of the government and achieve a $1 trillion economy from the less than $400 billion it is at the moment. However, as the year 2024 gradually slides into its last quarter, many Nigerians are looking forward to an improved economy that is viable. Joining us now on the morning show to look at the state of the Nigerian economy is renowned Nigerian economist and CEO of Financial Derivatives, Bismarck Rewane. Good morning, Mr. Rewane. Good morning. Good to have you in the studio with us. Welcome.
Two things.
Yes.
The first is the windfall tax.
Yes.
It looks like a global practice. They did it, after all, in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And then here, the Tinubu administration proposed 50%, but the Senate in its wisdom approved 70%.
Yeah.
But you say it will discourage investors.
Yes.
You say there is not what is in it for the companies. But some other people say, no, it's a good idea that the banks made too much money from foreign exchange practices. The second issue will be about third quarter GDP,
yes,
which they have put at 3.19%.
Yes.
And the government is jubilating, saying we should, applaud this. But I recall when I was commenting on this that you used to say, I don't know whether you have changed your position, that this economy needs to have up to double-digit GDP growth for us to be able to celebrate anything. Those two issues.
Thank you, Ruben. I think the first thing is there's what we call directional analysis and then what you call actual analysis. In other words, you could be directionally correct in terms of you had 30% score in mathematics, and now you've got 35%, but you have still failed. So directionally, you're moving, you've improved from 30 to 35%, but you still have to get to 50% before you pass there, before you get your score. I think that there's a misunderstanding of certain issues that we need to address. One, what's the state of the economy? Two, how do we fix it? So let's first of all start by looking at the economy. There are a couple of things that we need to know. Inflation has dropped marginally to 33.4%, but it is still way, way higher than what we call the natural rate of inflation. The GDP has grown by 3.19%. But if you drill down, you find out that actually, of the 46 activities that are monitored, only 10 expanded. That means 24% of the activity expanded, while 75% actually contracted or slowed. So don't bring out the champagne glasses yet. Yes, we are moving in the right direction, but too slow for it to be material. Right? But it's good that we're moving in that direction. The exchange rate has stabilized at about 1,625, while its PPP value is about 1,000. So there's a big gap, but at least it's not running away to 2,100 and all of that. So yes, there's time to take a breather, respite, and then begin to see where we are. But if I try to now actually relate this to the windfall tax. What are the goals? What are the broad macroeconomic goals of this economy? We said way back that we want to be among the top 20 economies in the world. At that time, we were number 26. Today, we are number 32, right? So we've actually worked our way down the ladder of success. Two, we said we wanted the economy, we now say that we want the economy to be a $1 trillion economy. In fact, we had $384 billion. So we need to kind of double it, actually 200% growth in the next 5 years. That's not going to happen, right? we say we want to insulate the economy from exogenous shocks. You now know that we are actually, as we integrate with the rest of the global economy, we are facing those shocks. Now, do we have a debt problem? We have a poverty problem, and we also, more than anything else, we have a management problem. That's the position. But the longest journey in the world starts with the first step. The steps of reforms and policy changes does not on its own transform an economy. It has to be backed with institutional reform, and you have to have a clear goal. The goal of revenue and the goal of growth and investment are totally, they are reinforcing, but they are not binary. It's not the obsession with revenue, which is where the tax, that you cannot run an economy just on revenue, but you cannot run an economy without revenue. The investment-led strategy, which is that is the focus of this economic management, right, Tim? Investment is a function of confidence. Confidence is a function of not what you say, but what you do, right? As long as what you are doing and what you are saying are in contradiction, then you'll have a problem. So to answer your question, that yes, the revenue and the windfall tax is not peculiar to Nigeria. It has been used in many places, as high as 90% in Germany and as low as 33% in the United Kingdom. That is true. Our GDP, our tax to GDP ratio is 9%, very low compared to 25% in South Africa. But it used to be 4 or 5%. The question is that what have you done with the revenue, right? Because there are two things in macroeconomics. One which is called a multiplier. So you have the government multiplier and you have the private sector multiplier. There's evidence to show that the government multiplier is much, much lower than that of an investment multiplier by the private sector.
All right.
And you could see it with the Dangote road. That is the road from Bagada to the airport to Tinkan Island.
I was actually going to ask,
yes.
So let me come in there. Because yes, as part of your proposal, you're not kicking against it totally.
No.
In fact, you've drawn the importance of this kind of taxes on economic growth.
Yes.
But you also propose perhaps a swap, a tax for projects.
Project swap, yes.
Yes. And this addresses some of the concerns of some people that beyond the tax and generating revenues, what it is being used for. If there can be a clear, you can show clearly what this raising this revenue would do, then it would make more sense. Now, asking the private sector to come in and actually do projects would make sense. I'd like you to, so you're proposing that, but beyond that is also a deterrent to investors. Because investors will say that when they lose money, they don't provide the subsidy. But when now they've gained, almost as if to cushion the effects of what they've lost in the past, you now want to tax it so heavily.
No, the truth is that the total forex gains came to about 1.4 trillion naira. Yeah. While the forex losses is 1.7 trillion naira. So net on the forex activity, there's a net loss of 300 billion naira to the economy. 1. 2, psychologically, people they are not encouraged. There's no incentive to pay taxes if you cannot account how the taxes of yesterday were used.
Yes.
So there's a trust deficit, and there's also a management problem, capacity problem, that when the taxes come in, they're either squandered, leakages, or just stranded. So in all, those three things give you what they call a negative multiplier. The multiplier theory says that if you invest X, right, you would have, and total income was Y. When you invest X, you will have, the Y will grow by a multiplier of X plus the multiplier effect, right?
Yeah.
So you get more. 1 plus 1 gives you almost 3 in that scenario. Whilst there's also the negative multiplier that 1 plus 1 can give you minus something because the money is stranded. We saw that in Shopee. Yeah. We took money from people, from consumers for petrol subsidy. We stranded it in a place where we're thinking of what to do with it. And that year, I think the next year, we had a recession, more or less, because there was the negative multiplier effect. So 1 is to know directionally where the economy is. 2 is to see whether these tools are going to give you the desired outcome. And 3, whether the desired outcome will make any sense and improve the quality of life of the people. You can have happy statistics and unhappy people, which is what we don't want.
That's true.
And which is what we have.
Yes.
In these recent times, even with the GDP numbers, it's happy statistics. So but I want to talk about inflation numbers.
Yeah.
They said inflation is coming down, but marginally people are not still seeing that because of the harvest season. Also, another problem I'd like to talk about is this exchange rate. A lot of people advocated for the float. Then they said he's going to find his fair value at 700 naira. Today it's gone to 1,006. You were talking about the PPP at 1,000.
970 actually.
970 or thereabout. But that's the purchasing power parity of this. So what do we do to be able to bring these numbers down? Because that exchange rate at 1,600 is killing businesses. And that's why you're having some telecom company talking about the fact that they want to start some sort of a load shedding. At exchange rate at 1,600, I know people in the business sector always talk about availability of the forex funds, but it's not good for the business ecosystem because you already have a purchasing power parity of the people that has been depreciated to you already have a depressed disposable income.
Well, let me say, first and foremost, the difference between physical sciences and social sciences is that physical sciences, when you carry out an experiment, you see instantaneous outcomes. You put acid and base, you get this, right? But social science, the time lag between when you make the initiative and when you see the impact is much longer. Therefore, you have to understand it in that context. And that's where the most important thing in social science is the credibility of the messenger and the message. So the reason why everybody's talking about this is that let us take the growth of 3.19, which is great. But how is growth is, GDP is aggregate output of what was produced. And you're comparing what happened in second quarter of 2024 with the second quarter of 2023. What was the position in the second quarter of 2023? You had a Naira design project. There was an election, right, in the second quarter. There were people waiting for the outcome of the tribunals and all that. Yeah. The economy had ground to a halt. Now, so when you compare that base year where there was nothing with whatever it is that you had in second quarter of 2024, it will look great. So it's not the total output in the economy did not expand. That's why you had maybe the third or fourth largest economy in Africa today when you used to be the largest. The largest, yeah. Therefore, so at times you can use data, right, to create an effect of what we say playing with mirrors, right? So the reality is that the base effect has made second quarter look great. Don't forget, in the second quarter, there were 2 months of the Buhari administration and 1 month of the Tinubu administration, right? Now, when you now go to the third quarter, when there was a near boom, after the announcement of the subsidy and the activity, when you compare that third quarter with the third quarter of 2024, you will see that the growth rate begins to decline. So it's too early to start celebrating. Directionally, it's good, but there's work to be done. Don't deceive yourself that because you had one flash in the pan, therefore the job is done. No, the job is far from done.
The case of Forex that we talked about, which is another very sad one. A lot of analysts said, in fact, somebody from the government said it was going to find its fair value. I think it was the finance minister at 700. But today, so is it a reflection of how weak our currency was and all of that? No. So what was really happening? How can we bring it back for businesses?
You see, when you look at an economy, you have to look at it from 4 perspectives. One is the fiscal, right? How the government is spending its money and raising money. 2 is the growth, how is the economy growing? 3 is monetary, where you have the level of inflation and interest rates. But 4, the most important one is the external sector, where you're talking about imbalances. The external imbalances are when a currency is misaligned. There are things which are structural, there are things that are transient. If, for example, there was a raid on Nigeria today or an earthquake, the currency will fall, but those are transient things. But structurally, you have a market structure where the central bank was the sole provider of foreign exchange. You had all sorts of things about Aboki FX and all that. The thing is that, technically speaking, our major source of foreign exchange is oil revenue, gas, diaspora flows, and other investment flows. there are structural problems that need to be adjusted. And when that is done, you find that the currency begins to find its true value. It's not a switch. I've heard so many things that once Dangote refinery opens up, then the currency will... No. You see, the most dangerous thing about... Yeah.
Before we go, very quickly, we have less than a minute. I wanted you to talk about what Mr. Femi Otedola said about the windfall tax. He expressed support for it.
Yes.
And he was complaining about the extravagant spending of bank CEOs, their obsession with private jets, and the need to focus more on operational efficiency, quality customer services, and restore values in the banking system. What do you think has gone wrong with the banking system?
No, but let us, you see, making money and spending money are two different things, right? So, you see, my proposal on this windfall tax is that, look, you can do it three ways. One, tax it and take it away. That is, you actually take money from those who made it Robin Hood economics, right? The second one is to say, look, we don't tax you, but you will use the tax, will compel you to use the tax for the social good. In other words, use it to build a road, affordable housing and all that. Then the other one is that we'll venture with you, partner with you to build assets. So there will be the economic capital, which accrues to the taxpayer. There will be the political capital, which will accrue to the government without putting any money in there, right? And thirdly, to the consumers, they would see and feel the effect. So that way, it's a win-win-win situation. The truth is that I understand what Femi Otedola is saying, but the way to look at it is that big minds talk about issues, right? And understand them. Average minds talk about events, and small minds talk about people. So I'm not going to go into that discussion as to whether people are private jets. That's a people problem. And how they spend their money, I cannot... That has nothing to do...
using depositors' money.
No, you can't do that. There's governance. You can't, these banks are examined and all that. If you cannot write a check and buy a private jet from depositors' money, if that happens, it won't take long before everybody will be found out. So I think that maybe they're having supernormal profits. Maybe the governance structures within those banks could allow that to happen. But how come that doesn't happen in HSBC or Barclays or JP Morgan? So because the governance structures are there entrenched. Here we are just metamorphosing into proper governance and proper companies. So I think that that phase will pass. But
okay. On that note, I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Bismarck Rewane, for joining us.